So welcome to a class on Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin's 10 Lessons to Men of Desire, which is, this is our new translation of it and annotated footnote version. This video is for chapter 2, okay? So right here on the right, you see the actual text. On the left, you see a diagram of the universal table that will help us to understand the text that we are going through. So let's just get right into it. Chapter 2, second lesson, the origins of matter. And we're going to go through this just like we did the last one. Looks like this one is about 10 pages, 25 sections. Let's try to get through that whole thing today. So I'm going to make this a little bigger so we can see it better. Bueno. All right, so brethren, in our last discourse, we looked at the theme of the creation of the universe, or of time. Time being that of creation, which should only be taken to mean the successive duration of the various bodies of which it is composed, and whose interrelated courses form equal intervals, commonly called time. He will then go on to demonstrate later how the soul is subject to time, while it is in its prison, or in the body of man. So the word used for soul is am, which can mean either soul or heart. Let's mute our microphones if we're not speaking, and of course unmute it in order to talk and say hello and answer any and bring up any questions. So already paragraph 1 has a lot to talk about. This shows that the Martinist philosophy, the Martinezist philosophy, is Gnostic in essence. Maybe not in the sense that the world is evil, but in the sense that the body of man is a sort of prison. He also talks about that all creation is, or all the universe is, the created universe is that which is time, which is subject to growth, reproduction, and decay. Okay? So number 2, the divine is without restriction. For it should not be thought that the divinity could be restricted by any limitations. His immensity being infinite, no creation could contain or define him. On the contrary, the divinity contains all kinds of emanations of spirit and creation of visible forms. This is so true that a pure and supple spirit could not be subject to time, since having no material body, no body made of visible matter could limit it. So we can relate this to our associate Élus initiation, in which it talks about the creation of man, or the emanation of man, and that this was a man born of a pure spirit, not born of earth, not born of woman, not subject to time and matter. The immensity of the divine contains all emanations. Creation is only that of visible forms. Does this make sense? Meaning that creation only exists within the spirit, the central axis of uncreated fire. Number 3, all exists through its law and operations. Because its law is above that of forms, it penetrates through all the different laws which shape their appearances, and it commands them and orders them according to the will of the eternal. So it's saying that the divine law is above the laws of nature. Therefore, no part of creation can exist except through the operations of these same spirits, as I'll explain better later, when I go on to speak about planetary bodies. Let us continue with creation. So everything exists through its law. And when one understands its law, then one is in perfect accord with both divinity and nature. Do what thou wilt. Should be the whole law. Number 4, form derived from the operation of the spirits of the central fire axis, using their innate 3 spiritual essences. Matter resided in the philosophical matras. Remember, that is that diagram we had before. We'll just pull this up for a moment as a refresher. This diagram from Saint-Martin's hand, we redrew the Hebrew letters because they weren't very clear. But so Aleph, Bet, Gimel, at the bottom, Dalet. The philosophical matras is this equilateral triangle, doubled over. The 3 dots symbolizing the undifferentiated forms of sulfur, salt, and mercury that were innate within the spirits of the central fire axis. So this philosophical matris is the divine retort, the alchemical vessel in which those principles first begin to move, become differentiated, become vivified, and eventually create matter. So at this point, matter was in a state of neutrality. Nothing had form. Everything was formless and void. The spiritual essences, sulfur, salt, mercury, being motionless, not being put into action, into time yet, were in a state of what is commonly called chaos. And this is similar to pretty much all forms of alchemical cosmology, is that first there's the universal chaos, whether we're looking at Dr. Rudd's diagrams or we're looking at Ambalan's diagrams in spiritual alchemy. What broke this state of neutrality and caused the original formation of the various bodies? It was the operation of the spirits of the central fire axis, or uncreated fire, which had sent forth these same essences from within themselves. And what caused them to move? They were moved by the word, right? I'm sure he'll say that in a moment. Number 5, spirits of the axis modified the essences. What was their operation? Their operation was to modify the essences in such a way as to be able to maintain impressions, so to receive an impression and to maintain it as a form, to create a distinction between these three essences. This distinction gave principle to the forms by adapting the different divisions and subdivisions of the ternary number to the changes which the spirits of the axis had made to those essences, i.e., their act made the essence of mercury more solid than those of sulfur and salt, that of sulfur more mobile than those of mercury and salt, and that of salt more fluid than those of mercury and sulfur. So we're starting to see the differentiation of what these bodies become. That was a hell of a paragraph. Notice that we capitalize the words divisions and subdivisions, divisions and subdivisions, because these are specific Martinez's terms about number theory, about arithmosophy. It's not just a common word, division. Division always means that first division. From the 3 of sulfur, salt, mercury, they subdivide to create the 6. They divide to make the 6. Then the 6 divides again to make the 9, right? Which is the number of matter. So the 3, then matter. So basically he shows that sulfur becomes the most, just like we look at this diagram on the left, sulfur becomes the fiery, the most outer point. Then it is tempered by the waters of salt, and then a form comes into being through the terrestrial or elemental mercurial spirits. Let's read the footnote here. Mercury, sulfur, and salt are the alchemical equivalents of spirit, soul, and body. For the work of the transmutation and reintegration, the salt of the body must become the working place of the spirit and soul. That is more dealing with traditional alchemical terms, the salt of the body. Here, really, mercury is more the body. On the level treated here, mercury, sulfur, and salt are the 3 aspects of the basic matter of all being consciousness. They are the most sublime emanations of divinity, brought to work upon one another. So 3 and 3 upon one another to make 9. As represented in the supernal triad or upper trinity of the Kabbalah. Pasquale utilizes them as 3 principal agents of creation, which are the 3 spiritual essences brought forth from the spirits of the central fire axes, which are the emancipated 3 inferior spirits, inferior ternary spirits. We all with me on this so far? So number 6, the 3 essences give rise to the centenary number, to 6. This first distinction initially gave rise to the centenary number, 6, since in the first neutral state of matter, the ternary mixture, being in a neutral state in the philosophical matris, formed no visible body, nor was it capable of retaining an impression. 7, the 3 essences are differentiated to make 6. Thus it was the spirits of the central fire axis who, through their action, in accordance with the thought of the eternal, that had been conveyed to them by his ternary word. So the three philosophical elements, receiving the ternary word gives rise to the century number, distinguishing that Mercury, one, sulfur being the second, salt being the third distinction. That seems it backwards, but whatever. Now, by this mystical addition, 1 and 2 are 3, and 3 makes 6. What he's trying to say is 1 plus 2 plus 3. 1 plus 2 equals 3. 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. The 6 thoughts of the eternal. This is the manifestation of the 6 thoughts of the eternal, and not the 6 days that the scriptures symbolically attribute to the eternal. For as I said earlier, the eternal, being infinite in his immensity, cannot have any limits of duration, since time is only the changing succession of the relationship of bodies with each other. But the eternal manifests thoughts, which the different spirits carry out according to the plan given to them. So he's saying that the word days, 6 days of creation, is a misnomer, because the eternal has no sense of time. The exoteric tradition took the 6 thoughts and wrote them down as days so that we could comprehend them. That's one way to look at this. But really it's the 6 thoughts being carried out by the 6 spirits, which eventually become the 7 planetary spirits. And if you recall the first degree Élus Coëns symbolic apprentice initiation, in the beginning, before the beginning, Adam, the man, is laid down in the center of the circles. And from the east, let's say this is the east, the master invokes the planetary spirits, and then the 2 wardens come up in circumambulations. One of them receives the word and transmits it down to the next one. And they keep going in these 6 circumambulations in which they manifest the 6 thoughts, the planetary angels, with the 7th being that movement of rest in the center. So very in line with traditional Loranic Kabbalah of the 6 points of direction, 6 points of space, and then the 7th being the center of rest. So they literally play that out in the first degree initiation. Number 9, the finite nature of matter. Thus we see that the century number came from the ternary number, because the ternary word of the eternal, being forever with him, cannot have a beginning, since it emanated from the eternal, while the century number was created with the operation of the spirits of the central fire axis. Thus I demonstratively have proven that this universe must have an end, since its beginning was wrought about through the operation of the spirits of the axis. And since the operation of all spirits is finite, it can only last as long as the infinite being commands it to. This refutes the objection to the eternity of matter, because it is impossible for that which has a beginning to last forever, as it must necessarily also have an end. Thus we see the birth of the century number regarding forms. This was probably pretty groundbreaking at the time. In 1780 or 1790 or so, imagine when this was written. Well, he was still an Élus Coëns. So 1774 is when Pasquale died. This was probably written around 1770 then, I would guess. I don't know the day off the top of my head, but it'd be before Pasquale died. This is probably pretty groundbreaking in 1770, because he's here saying that matter is not infinite, that because matter began, it will end. And I think that is pretty much what we agree now with modern physics, is that because of the Big Bang, everything started, and eventually it will either, and they don't know how it's going to end, but it might either collapse or just eternally spread out. Pretty interesting concept. Any comments or anything so far? Okay, we'll keep moving on then. Number 10. Numbers are eternal. Bodies are apparent. Numbers must not be confused with bodies. The number, the principle of a number, as I've already said, is co-eternal, since the number has always been with God. But as the bodies are purely apparent and only exist through the operation of the spirits, they can only be considered as passive. Apparent, i.e. physical. The universe, number 11, the universe will cease when the spirit's operation ceases. As soon as the operation of the different spirits is finished, They will cease, and there will be no more universe than there was before it was formed. I call the separation of the essences, mercury, sulfur, salt, the birth of the century number, since it is the operation of the spirits of the axis which caused it to come into being. So he calls the separation of the essences the birth of the century. 12, the 3. So he's going over the same concepts again and again to make sure it sinks in, right? And he's showing you the same concepts in different manners. 12, the 3. Through the spirits of the central fire axis manifested the 6 thoughts. The origin of all bodies, then, was the ternary number. The formation of these same bodies was the century number, which completed the 6 thoughts God had for the creation of the universe, as they were manifested to the spirit agents, builders, or makers of the central fire axis. There's another ternary description, just like in Masonic Catechism. Cut, carve, engrave, etc. You know, A, B, C. You're always getting ternaries. So these are spiritual agents, builders, or makers. The spirits of the central fire axis. 13. 9 as a threefold subdivision of the essences. As soon as the century number, so we have the origin, the division, then soon the subdivision to 9. As soon as the century number was completed, forms were born. Here's creation, here's birth. As to demonstrate this more clearly, one only must look at what follows the 3 numbers, 3, 6, 9. The number 9 is the subdivision, capitalized, of the essence in all bodies, the subdivision of the ternary essence. The principle of mercury is a threefold mixture, which contains sulfur and salt. So mercury is mercury, so all 3 is mercury, but it's also mercury, sulfur, salt. Sulfur also contains salt and mercury. Salt also contains mercury and sulfur. So if each of them has each of them in it, sulfur, mercury, salt equals 9. So everything is contained within each other. The subdivision.
So does it get its name because with a particular name, for instance, like mercury, you said contains part of the others. Does that mean that it contains more of a part of mercury? You know, say like 2/3 of it is mercury, or is it pretty much just an equal mix?
I don't think he describes if it's an equal mix. He just says that they contain each other, and we can think of this in the sense that if we look on the left, that diagram, at first, all there is would be the spirits of the central fire axis. You know, nothing else would exist, and maybe eventually we'll break this down into a series of images showing the descent. That could be another development of this lesson of this diagram. At first, there would only be the spirits of the central fire axis. There would only be that barrier, that ring past naught. And it would be the undifferentiated salt, sulfur, mercury. Now, when they divide into 6, because they receive the word, they divide into 6, right? And then because of that, they divide into 3 again. What it's saying is that salt, sulfur, mercury will always still contain a little bit of each of them in it. They're always intermingled. They're always intermixed.
So it's just that they're not pure.
I guess, yeah. Obviously, for the sulfur spirits, sulfur dominates, and salt and mercury would be the passive part, right? For the salt spirits, mercury and sulfur would be passive, and salt would dominate. For the mercury spirits, sulfur and salt would be passive, and mercury would dominate.
Okay, yeah, that was basically what I was asking. All right, thanks.
Cool. The subdivision makes 9. For unity cannot properly belong to the body, but only to divinity. And that was clever, man. He shows that even though there's this unity, there's this commingling between salt, sulfur, and mercury, they make 9. They make the number of matter, separation, not of 10 or 1 or even 0. They can only make 9. They can only get close. There's something missing. There's a number missing to create unity. The unity attributed to mercury in simple division is only considered relative to the mixture of mercury, which is the base of the other 2. That's just, I don't know, jargon. He's saying that, like, mercury has an essence in which it contains all 3 of them, but it still is not a true unity, because unity only exists to the 1 or the 10. Number 14, 3 for the essences, 6 for the division, 9 for the subdivision. So this whole lesson seems to be about 3, 6, 9. The number 9 is therefore the subdivision of the 3 essences, or the different bodies as follows. 3 for mercury, 3 for sulfur, 3 for salt makes 9. Thus, 3 for the essences considered individually, 6 for the division, 9 for the subdivision, 3, 6, 9, 18, 9. Thus, the origin of matter. So, see the chapter Martinus and Manipulation of Numbers in this book for details in Martinezist arithmosophy, meaning theosophic addition, which is theosophic reduction, and then theosophical multiplication in the 3 powers of any number: root, essential root, second essential root, square, and cube. For example, what you see here, 3, 6, 9, slash 18, slash 9, you're seeing 3 plus 6 plus 9 equals 18, right? Then you're saying 1 plus 8 equals 9. So the thing about 9 is 9 always returns to itself. Whenever we multiply its numbers, 9 times 9 is 81. 8 plus 1 equals 9. 9 times 8 equals 72. 7 plus 2 equals 9. 9 times 7 equals 63. 6 plus 3 equals 9, etc., etc. Every multiplication of 9 will, through theosophical reduction, return to 9. So he's showing that matter can only create matter, which is a clever proof for him that matter is lacking unity. It remains consider the triangle, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 1, a 1. At this stage, I'll only consider it in terms of its number 3. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. 1 to the west, 1 to the south, 1 to the north. Now, this diagram is upright because it was upright in the drawing, but obviously it should be flipped, right? Just like we did in the other diagrams later. Gives us 3, or the ternary. So, adding it to the product above, we have 3 plus 6 plus 9 equals 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. 3 equals 1 plus 2. Well, so 9 plus 3 equals 12. 1 plus 2 equals 3. We have the product 3, by which we can clearly see that the complement of the operation of the spirits of central fire axis gives us the number 3 after the process of division and subdivision, which still fulfills the law the eternal had manifested in the spirits of the axis. Add the word to the operation of the spirits of the axis, and we attain 6. So 3 plus the word equals 6. 15. The threefold word will return to God. The threefold product of matter will end. Now we're getting somewhere. Now the threefold word, the ternary word, having come from God, must return back to him. But the threefold product of the spirits of the axis, having had a beginning, is passive or must end. Thus it is only the thought of the eternal that formulates the law of the universe and supports all creation. The laws of appearance of these different bodies can only last as long as this law exists, because it supports this very operation. So he's saying that, matter will come to an end, and the only thing that sustains matter is that the word operated on the spirits of the central fire axis. Once those spirits cease operating, visible apparent matter will cease, and the so-called reintegration of forms will occur. 16. The man of desire binds to the eternal law. So here's, I think, some pragmatism. The man of desire, who follows the laws of the eternal, will thus no longer suffer privation, or exclusion, or separation, or damnation, or isolation from deity. Since, by unifying himself closely with the eternal law, the passive law of forms could not be a restriction to him. So, by uniting with the above, with Keter and that law, you will supersede the law of Malkut, or the law of apparent forms. Thus, my brothers and sisters, you see the necessity that we all must follow the holy laws. For as we come nearer to the eternal, the light comes closer to us. If we separate ourselves from it, the darkness takes over. Pretty self-explanatory, right? "17. The spirits of the central fire axis are the product of the three essences. In the following explanation, I will give the different dimensions of the triangle. For the moment, I will continue to talk about the creation of the different bodies. Perhaps you will ask how the spirits of the axis could emanate from within the three essences, and how, through them, they were able to form all the bodies in the universe without any matter whatsoever, no matter before them. I will reply that from the origin of their emanation, the three essences were innate in these beings, who should only consider themselves as a product of their operation. Kind of repeating itself. 18. The laws of privation differ between men, which is interesting. Thus it is from the operation alone, in accordance with the thought of the eternal, that all forms came into being. Now I would say that the physical proof of this operation of the various spirits is the only thing which brings these forms into being, is that the spirits commanding the various bodies of the universe could not be limited by these same bodies, just as one can see that there are men who, in the body of man, see the circulation of blood, others who, in the body of the earth, see the circulation of water, rivers, lakes, streams, others who, from a great height or distance, see bodies which other men cannot perceive. These particular virtues of men show us that the laws of privation are not the same for all men, since the majority of men are deprived of seeing the things which I have just spoken about. If matter were real, all people would see it in the same way. There would be only one law for them all. Thus one may convince oneself through thought, which is the same for all men in regards to eternal things, such as number. So it's kind of a weak analogy, but he's trying to say that like some men just see the outer form of matter. Some might see a circulation of blood within the body of man. They see like deeper into the body, the particular universal body, the particular terrestrial body of man. Others look at the general terrestrial body of the earth and see that same circulation in the rivers. Others, he says, there's more, look at the solar system and see like the movement of bodies there. So he's trying to show there's different levels of man that might see different levels of reality.
I would also say that in proof that matter is not real, he's basically saying that everybody perceives matter to be different. So we don't all perceive reality to be the same.
Therefore, it is at least subjective as opposed to objective.
Yeah, except for number, though.
Except for number.
Yep.
Yes, because number is not of matter. That's the whole point, is that number is superior. Number is from Keter. Number is eternal, whereas matter is temporal and passive. So, subjective, objective numbers, mathematics. Exactly. Very good wrap-up. Number 19. Purity determines the superiority and perspective of man. The triangle, as known to all men in the universe, gives rise to distinct thoughts of the number 3, since one angle is not the other, even though the properties of this figure are vast. Whenever any man looks at it, the resulting thought where numbers are concerned is always the same. There's always a 3. Thus the superiority of men comes from the greater or lesser degree of purity, which allows them to observe a greater number of characteristics. Now, the distinctive character of each man where spirit is concerned comes from thought, which has more or less varied properties relative to the operation of these same spirits. Number 20. So, number 20. Apparent matter will end at the fulfillment of the law. Matter is therefore only apparent, and only exists through the work that the various spirits do to make it appear to us as it does. None of the spirits which operate it are infinitely superior to it, because their operation being limited, and they themselves being eternal, they order all their works existing only through the law of the eternal, and will only end when this law has been fulfilled. So, number is co-eternal. The spirits are co-eternal. They are emanated, right? But their operation is temporal, passive, subject to time. And the only reason their operations exist is because the ternary word influences them through the thought. Once this word retracts back, then this operation will cease to be, right? It will. Thus, brethren, it is from the number 3 that the production of spirit forms took place as follows. 1 to the divinity, 2 to the demon, 3 to the shapes which came to contain these same demons. Demons, in this sense, is to be understood as the fallen spirits dividing from divine unity by use of their own free will, i.e., the corrupt, prevaricated spirits. 21. Matter created in order to contain the perverse spirits. The spirits of the central fire axis carry within themselves all kinds of faculties for, here's a 3, production, maintenance, and reintegration. So production is like the E, Isis and the EIO. Maintenance could perhaps be the apophis, like the sustaining. It's not really perfect, but and then reintegration would be the 3rd stage. So like an EIO process. Birth, maintenance, death, or reintegration, and starting over again. Thus, it is not surprising that their operation produced the universe, created in order to contain the first perverse spirits, and for serving as the barrier to their evil operations. So that the maintenance, preserving as a barrier, which will never prevail against the unchangeable laws of the eternal is assigned to each part of the universe. 22. The ternary is the operation to contain confusion. 3 contains the 2. The ternary number, as we have seen, is the operation of the various spirits in order to contain confusion. Remember that number 2 is confusion. Thus, all the efforts of these spirits will never destroy any kind, nor any species of the bodies which make up this creation, nor will they change its duration. For the supports of these same bodies are the spirits, which are superior to all of their antagonists, and they have God at their head, at their chief, at their root. Whereas the evil spirits, so the central fire axis spirits are sustained by the word, by the thought, by the eternal, whereas the evil spirits are constantly limited in their works of destruction. And 2, whether their power of destruction is limited by the disunity which results from it, and so it is forced into an indissoluble union with the component parts of the whole, operating for the support of nature, as can be seen when one looks at the reproduction of vegetation. So we're saying just by the nature of them creating disunity, everything they do is temporal, and it cannot be sustained. 23. If the sower who plants a field planted wheat or other seed, and half the crop produced was good, and half spoiled, we would never be able to reap wheat from the earth. For if the spoilage is equal to the good vegetation, it would give rise to an uneven mixture, which would never yield flour. Now it is seen that from the different seeds sown on the general body of the earth, remember general body, this word is corps general, the physical or terrestrial world. General is the physical world, the macrocosm, l'immensité terrestre, or earth, whereas if it was corps particulier, that'd be the particular body of man. Now it is seen that from the different seeds sown in the general body of the earth, more good grain is taken than bad grain, because all beings with visible forms on earth feed on it. This deduction may lead us to notice the same is true of the different bodies which are constantly attacked and are all subject to sickness. He's basically saying that there is more good than evil in the world. And the proof of this is that if good and evil were even, then it would just like conquer the good all the time. And that obviously here is not all evil. 24. The operations of good will eternally triumph over evil. However, since the beginning of the universe, none of the various bodies have been destroyed. Consider it in relation to the conception of modern physics, that matter cannot be created nor destroyed, right? It only, go back to that number 9. Ever since matter was created, first created from the eternal, all it does is reproduce itself again and again and again. Every multiple of 9 equals 9. Again, 9 times 9 equals 81. 8 plus 1 equals 9. 9 times 8 equals 72. 7 plus 2 equals 9, etc., etc., every multiple of 9. So right here, he's kind of cluing into what modern physics says, is that ever since the Big Bang, matter cannot be created or destroyed. It's only changing its forms in matter. Even when you get to, like in the Big Bang, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but like the first 10 elements or so of the periodic table were created, right? And we didn't get the rest of the periodic table until time evolved, and those primitive elements formed into stars, formed into supernovas, and once supernovas exploded, the rest of the periodic table of the elements was created. But really, it's not that anything new was created, it just changed its form, right? So everything is said to have existed at the Big Bang that exists here now. It's a total mindfuck. The gospel of truth says error has no root. This should convince us of the superiority of the operation of the spirits working for good over those working for evil. The one is benign, holy, and lasting. The other is impure and passive. Because as soon as the universe becomes reintegrated, the working of the evil spirits will come to an end. For the works of all good spirits which contribute to its production, maintenance, and reintegration, there's that phrase again. You're going to see certain triple phrases again and again and again. Production, maintenance, reintegration. Would begin a new type of operation following the very holy laws of the eternal, which the eternal will draw up for them. This, brethren, concludes the number 3. This whole lesson was about number 3, becoming 6, becoming 9. In the following discourse, we will speak of the different properties of the triangle and the emanation of man. 25. I wish you all an eternal, indissoluble union which nothing can change. Your constancy in becoming unified will be the seal to your happiness. Join with me in prayer to the Eternal, that he may give us all the grace to progress forward into light. The order which you have joined is the repository of the flame, which should lead you there. Your precision, your zeal, your perseverance in following it will be richly rewarded, and everything is conspiring to remove man from his principle. And while everything is conspiring to remove man from his principle, you will be the repositories of the way which should lead there, never again to leave it. May charity remain with us all eternally. Amen. That is lesson 2.